It's not even Halloween yet, and I'm already starting to make Christmas cards. I'm a pretty novice crafter and card maker. I've been doing it for like 3 years, but on and off, so not frequently enough to get good. So I learned by doing. And in this video, I am remaking a card that I saw from Christina Werner, who is a really great artist and hand letterer and card maker. So I figured I would share this video for anyone out there who's new at card making or not great at card making like me, and just see some of the ways that, normal everyday card makers use their tools to try to pull off some of these wonderful designs we see. So I started off by making 2 card bases with some Neenah Solar White cardstock. In Christina's video, she uses craft paper as the card base and stamps directly on that card base. However, my craft paper is not as sturdy as I'd like it to be, so I decided to make 2 art panels. I cut these down to 5 1/4 by 4 inches so that when I mount them onto the card base, that they will have a little bit of a white border, as you can see here. Next, I took out the stamp sets that I wanted to use. The stamp set on the left I'm using for the sentiment, and the one on the right is for the actual, the repeating pattern that's going to be on the card. I then mounted the stamps on my acrylic block in the way I wanted them to appear in the pattern. I don't know if you can tell from this terribly low quality video, but the stamp in the middle is a stocking, and in the next clip you'll notice that when I start stamping, I'm not using a stocking. I noticed that the star and the little gift box had pretty similar widths and heights, and the stocking was taller than both of those and quite narrow, so I thought that would kind of throw the pattern off. So I end up replacing the stocking with a star. In Christina's video, she uses a white pigment ink to stamp the pattern and then overlays the pattern with different colored inks. I'm using the Stays On white pigment ink, which I guess because it would dry out, you have to re-ink every time you use it. And you use that little spatula there to kind of soak the ink into the pad. I actually like that idea rather than kind of hoping that it will stay wet. Pigment ink is really, really sticky, and I am terrible at stamping with white pigment ink specifically because you really have to commit. You have to stamp and lift, and I'm kind of a sloppy stamper. So what I did before I started actually stamping on the card was stamped a few practice runs just to make sure I wasn't moving the pad around. I got a good feel for what it feels like to stamp down and up. To make sure also I was getting good coverage, because I haven't used that ink pad in a while actually, so I wanted to make sure the ink was still good. I then laid out the sentiment stamps on the card to just figure out where I want them to be so that I could add a few pencil marks to the card so that I could stamp around the area. You'll notice my hair making an appearance in some of the shots. I still don't have a really great setup for recording art, and I'm also recording this with my phone because I actually left my better camera in a rental car in Iceland. Don't worry, it is on its way across the ocean right now, I hope. Next, I start stamping the pattern using that sort of scrap paper that I was doing my test stamps on for any stamping that happens to go off the side of the card. So I stamped that one, and I ended up stamping another one, making 2 cards here. This is just I just wanted to show you guys my stamp scrubber, cleaning off all of the white pigment ink, because you really, really have to get in there and clean off white pigment ink so that I could have fresh stamps in the same layout for doing the color inking. In this clip, I just started taking out a bunch of different colors. I only end up using 3 for some reason. I don't know why I didn't do a different color for each row. I think I did some tests and they just weren't showing up as vibrantly on top of the white. I think that the white pigment ink I use is brighter than the one that Christina uses. So this effect, this offset stamping effect, it works. I think it looks okay, but some of the lighter ink colors weren't showing up as well on top of the white. So I go ahead and stamp and cover all of the pattern with some different colored ink, and then I erase the guidelines I used for the sentiment area. I then go ahead and lay out the sentiment on the acrylic block in the order I want it, and now I am going to start embossing. Here I'm using the EK Tools powder, I don't know what you call it, the powder tool, I don't know. That helps when you're adding the embossing powder so that it only sticks to the sticky part, not anything else. I mentioned earlier that I'm not great at stamping with white pigment ink. I'm even worse at embossing. I never seem to get good coverage with the Versamark ink. If you don't know, Versamark is a sticky ink that you use to give the embossing powder something to stick to, and then you heat the embossing powder and it's beautiful and great and lovely. I actually surprised myself here. I did a pretty good job of getting coverage with the Versamark ink. I'm using some Hero Arts white embossing powder. I recently bought this. I had been using some of the cheaper embossing powders for a while, and they were okay. I just, I don't craft that much, so I figured, why spend more money? I finally bit the bullet and got the nicer Hero Arts embossing powder, and it was worth the money. So next I am heating up that embossing powder with a heat tool. I have a pretty crappy heat tool. I think it's called Nicole. Some of the big shot crafters seem to use the Milwaukee heat tool. Again, I'm not that invested into my crafting just yet, so the little cheapy one I can get from Michael's is fine. So you'll see here as the embossing powder heats up, it turns from a pale white to a nice bright white as it melts, and I actually was really surprised. I did a pretty good job, if I do say so myself, embossing. So yeah, at this point the card is pretty much finished. I mount the art piece to the front of the white card base, and you see I got the little white border going on there, and slap it down, and card is done. So yeah, that's it. Thanks so much for watching. If you are also a novice card maker or crappy card maker like me, let me know in the comments. Give the video a thumbs up. Tell me sort of, some of the techniques or tools or methods you're using to learn and get better. Maybe some of the cards that you've reproduced. I would love to see that. Thanks, everyone.